The Holy Gospel according to St. Matthew, the 25th chapter. Glory to you, Lord. Jesus said, "For it is as if a man, going on a journey, summoned his slaves and entrusted his property to them. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, each according to his ability. Then he went away. The one who had received the 5 talents went off and traded with them, and made 5 more talents. In the same way, the one who had 2 talents made 2 more talents. But the one who had received the 1 talent went off and dug a hole in the ground and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those slaves came and settled accounts with them. Then the one who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 more talents, saying, 'Master, you handed over to me 5 talents. See, I have made 5 more talents.' His master said to him, 'Well done, good and trustworthy slave. You have been trustworthy in a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master.' And the one with the 2 talents also came forward, saying, 'Master, you handed over to me 2 talents. See, I have made 2 more talents.' His master said to him, 'Well done, good and trustworthy slave. You have been trustworthy in a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master.' Then the one who had received the 1 talent also came forward, saying, 'Master, I knew that you were a harsh man, reaping where you did not sow and gathering where you did not scatter seed. So I was afraid, and I went and I hid your talent in the ground. Here, you have what is yours.' But his master replied, 'You wicked and lazy slave. You knew, did you, that I reap where I did not sow, and I gather where I did not scatter? Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and on my return I would have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him, and give it to the one with the 10 talents. For to all those who have, more will be given, and they will have abundance. But from those who have nothing, even what they have will be taken away. As for this worthless slave, throw him into the outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." The Gospel of the Lord. So over the years, I have had the opportunity to talk with a lot of different financial planners, many of whom have been members here at Prince of Peace. And as I've talked with financial planners, I have learned that there are basically 3 things you need if you're going to be successful at investing. The first thing that you need is time. And every financial planner I've ever met says, you know, people start out thinking you need a lot of money, and they said, really what you need is you need a lot of time. Because given enough time, even small amounts of money can become big amounts of money. And that's why they always start by impressing upon people how important time is. The second thing you need is a good vehicle in which to invest, which is to say you shouldn't do what people did in the old days or said they did and stuff money in a mattress. That's not really a good vehicle for investing. And financial planners have told me some of the problems that people get into are when they use the wrong vehicle for their investment. So they use stocks for a short-term investment, or they use money market accounts for a long-term investment. Those kinds of things are problematic. But the third thing you need, and the hardest thing, and the one that drives financial planners absolutely crazy, is you have to actually make the investment. You actually have to take the amount, even if it's a small amount, and put it in. You do it all the time. And this is the thing that when I sit and I talk to people who have been members here, they say, this is the thing that makes me crazy about my job. One of our folks said to me one time, you know, I have clients that make $50,000 a year, and I have clients that make $500,000 a year. And if I don't get it first, it's all spent. It doesn't matter what you make. If I can't get people to commit to making the investment, it's never going to happen. And that's the big problem. People just fail to invest. And today's parable is really a classic case of failure to invest. Jesus sets up a story in which 3 slaves are given huge opportunities. They all apparently have skill and experience in financial management and planning because they're each given money according to their ability. So they have the ability. These are not people who used to be farmhands who are suddenly told, go make investments. They're all people who know how to do this stuff. And they're given the amount equal to their ability. And we sometimes look back and we say, well, the one of them, he only has 1 talent, right? One is the loneliest number, stuff like that. But a talent is a sum of money equal to 6,000 days' pay for an average worker. So in today's dollars, that would be like this third slave who has the 1 talent, has an equivalent between $half and $750,000. He's got plenty to work with. And trips in those days, when people took trips, when the master's going to take a trip, that could last for months or years. They've got the time. And moreover, the master attaches no strings to which vehicles these people are going to be able to use to invest the money. They can do whatever they want and however they want to do it. And we don't learn anything about it. It's just they're allowed to go and do what they want to do with it. So the first two go off, and they did what they were supposed to do. And they doubled the money. The third one went off, and he stuffed the money in a mattress. I mean, literally, dug a hole in the ground and hid the money. And in spite of the fact, therefore, that the guy had the time and he had the opportunity, he failed to invest. But his biggest mistake was not that he failed to invest the money. His biggest mistake was he failed to invest himself in the project. He didn't take his job seriously. Perhaps he didn't feel that he had all that much money because, 1 isn't a lot compared to 2 or 5. Maybe he just decided that he didn't feel like doing it, but finally in the end he was completely wrong about the master. In the end, the master was not going to be harsh if he lost the money. Because indeed, when the master comes back, he hasn't lost anything, and he's made plenty off of the other 2. Instead, the master cast the third slave out into the outer darkness because he says the slave is wicked and lazy. That is, he didn't care. And he didn't invest himself, not just the money. In the end, this third slave, he missed out on all of the joy of the other 2. And often, we read this parable and we think about the guy that dug the hole in the ground and hid the money, and that's where we focus. But what about the other 2? The other 2 were able to, it says, enter into the joy of the master. And that means that they didn't miss out on the joy of personal growth and accomplishment. The first 2 invested themselves in the opportunity they were given, and they come forward, and you get the sense that they're really, actually proud and happy about what they've been able to accomplish. They go, well, you gave me 5, I made 10. It's cool. You gave me 2, I got 4. I did this. And, even if the master had been, all right, good, well, that's what you were supposed to do now. Thank you, goodbye. They would have still had this sense of, wow, I knew I could do this if I was ever given this opportunity. I was given the opportunity and I did it. And you can walk away from something like that and have this personal sense of fulfillment. And they celebrated that personal sense of fulfillment. It was something that could only happen, not just because they invested the money, but because they invested themselves. They invested themselves, and so they were able to share in the joy of making a difference for the entire household. Because see, if the master has this much money, the household is really big. It's got lots of people, lots of servants, lots of extended family. In fact, the first 2 made a lot of money for the master. But because they made all this money, they were making life better for the entire household. All of their family, all of their friends, everybody they knew was going to have a better life because they invested themselves in the opportunity that they were given. And they could walk away with that sense of joy that even if the master didn't appreciate them, well, they had made life better for others that mattered to them, and that was worth doing. But then finally, in the end, what they've been asked to do is to enter into the joy of the master. And you get the sense that the master's throwing this big party, and he says, this is great, you guys have done exactly what I've asked you to do, you've been faithful, you've invested in yourself, come to the party, you are the guests of honor. And they get to celebrate the generosity and the opportunity which the master is going to continue to give them. That's the kind of joy that the third slave misses out on. Not because he was a bad manager of money, but because he didn't invest himself. So, when Jesus tells this parable, he is not primarily giving us financial advice. Although, it's good for financial advice too. Don't take your money and dump it in a hole and don't do nothing with it. But rather, like many of the parables at the end of Matthew's Gospel, Jesus is telling this parable because he wants to impress upon us the real opportunity of God's grace and God's love in our lives. And Jesus is using this parable to call us not to miss out on the opportunity to invest ourselves in what God is doing in our lives and in the life of the world. Not to miss out on the opportunities that God is giving to us each day. Because when we invest ourselves in God's opportunities, we are not earning God's love or earning God's acceptance, and we are not buying fire insurance so that we do not get cast out into the outer darkness where there will be screaming and yelling and gnashing of teeth and all that kind of good stuff. But like the first two slaves, Jesus is calling us to invest ourselves in God's opportunities so that we can enter into joy. So that we can enter into the joy of being part of something bigger than ourselves. Of being part of God's coming kingdom in the world, right here and right now. I frequently talk to people who say, you know what, I wish I could feel God's presence in my life. I want to feel God's movement. I want to know that God is there with me, that I am not alone. How do I do that? And I do not know any other way to feel that in your life other than investing yourself in the opportunities God gives you. When you invest yourself in prayer and in worship, when you invest yourself in study and in learning, when you invest yourself in caring for others and actually feel yourself being God's hands and God's presence in the lives of others, that's how you start to actually feel God's presence in your life. That's how I've seen that happen. That's how it felt for me, how I've seen it happen for other people. Investing yourself in the opportunity is not so that you don't get thrown into outer darkness. It's so that you can actually have that sense of spiritual growth, that sense of connection to God that only happens when you're willing to invest yourself in that relationship. You can't just show up at worship or show up at a service project or somehow show up at a Bible study and say, well, I'm here, God lay it on me. You gotta invest yourself in it so that God has that opportunity to actually grow in your life. That's the kind of joy that Jesus wants us to have. And that's why he calls us to invest ourselves in God's opportunities. And if we do that properly, then we also enter into the joy of making a difference in the lives of others. The spiritual growth is supposed to be personal, something that you're supposed to feel personally, but it's not supposed to be private. It's not just to be something just for you. The most pompous Christians you never want to meet are the ones who want to tell you how close they feel to Jesus, and they don't care at all about anybody else around them. But the thing is, those first two slaves who invested themselves in the project, they didn't just make life better for them, they made life better for everybody else. And when we invest ourselves in God's opportunities, we end up doing things that not only help us feel the kingdom of God in our lives, we help make the kingdom of God a real living reality in the lives of others. And that's the thing that creates a sense of satisfaction and joy that cannot happen when it's just for you or it's just for me. We're doing that for others. And that's the kind of joy Jesus wants us to enter into. It's why he calls us to invest ourselves in God's opportunities. And of course, when we invest ourselves, we also enter into, in one sense, God's joy. We enter into a way of thanking and praising God simply by what we're doing and how we're living our lives. As we get ready for Thanksgiving this week, which I still don't know how Thanksgiving got here already this week, but at some point, usually we recognize during the week of Thanksgiving that to be thankful is more than just saying thank you out of our mouths or writing a note. Thankfulness is a way we live. It's the way we treat, it's reflecting the way we treat other people. It's the way we share ourselves when we recognize that we have an abundance. How you live is a way of giving thanks and praise to God. And when you invest yourself, you are actually entering into that thanks and that praise, because you're living in a way that shows God's love for the world around you, and which actually shows God that you actually are thankful for the abundance that God has given you. In today's bulletin, there's an insert, and Chris told you at the beginning of the service that I have been inflicting why inserts on you for the last several weeks. So today we begin the third of 3 weeks of this insert called Why Do We Participate? Now, often when we talk about participation, when pastors or anybody else gets up and talks about participation in church, the subtext is because we need people to do these jobs around the church. And that is always the case, whether we're talking about participation or not. But that's not really why we call people to participate. And in the insert, I've asked us to consider our participation as a way of thinking about what is our investment of ourselves in being part of what God is doing in our lives. How is it that our investment of our very selves helps us to grow in a relationship with God and with each other? And what are the activities, what are the events that are worth investing in because they bring us into those kinds of joy? The joy of personal spiritual growth, the joy of making a difference in the lives of others, the joy of praising God and entering into that kind of thanksgiving. Those are not just rhetorical questions. I think that they're the questions that today's parable calls us to answer in very concrete and practical ways. For it's through investing ourselves in the opportunities God gives us that we grow spiritually. It's through investing ourselves in the opportunities that God gives us that we help others experience the kingdom of God as a living reality in their lives. And it's through investing ourselves in the opportunities God gives us that we give praise and thanks to God, who seeks to include all of us in the joy of His coming kingdom.